I'm Cheyenne and I'll be your host for this episode. Today we have invited Charles to share with us his role as a PM at YouTrip and his transition from mechanical engineering to product management, as well as his projects and initiatives that he's been involved in. Hi Charles, would you like to briefly introduce yourself first and describe your role as a product manager?
Sure. So I graduated from NUS Mechanical Engineering in 2021. As part of my studies, I was on the NUS Overseas College program where I embarked on the entrepreneurship program to Beijing. And throughout my candidature, I also embarked on multiple internships ranging from business development, consulting, product marketing, and product management to explore my career interests. And that was what actually got me intrigued into the realm of product management, specifically during my time at Xiaomi, where I learned that I think the role of a product manager has a lot more influence but not control over the product roadmap and product development lifecycle. And I think the software industry naturally moved much faster than hardware, which is where I came from as a mechanical engineer. So that's why I eventually decided to move into product management. As for my role as a product manager, I think the easiest way to describe it is that I oversee the whole end-to-end product development lifecycle, from validating whether a feature has its own space in the market for your company, conducting the user interviews to understand the design decisions and trade-offs for the features that you are building, to creating and gathering the requirements for the feature, checking in with your stakeholders to ensure that the features fulfill their needs, and then all the way to discussing with the marketing team on the go-to-market strategy as well as the release strategy. Because at YouTrip we do build quite a the app has many users, so when we release a new feature, we want to ensure that it is stable before we release it to the larger user base.
Thanks, Charles, for the introduction. Now, would you like to share more about how you started your career in product management?
Yeah, sure. So like what I have shared earlier, prior to graduation, some of the internships I embarked on were on business development. So basically, I was helping a startup to acquire customers. In back then, the customers were like student societies. So we were like an event management platform that essentially helped them with managing their finances lah. So I had to go out to the streets, literally at SMU, to ask the student society leaders whether they would be keen to try such a software. So I guess that was my first endeavor into doing like user interviews to some extent. Then I did an internship with Xiaomi as a product marketer, as well as a product management internship at Pasar Perform, and lastly my consulting internship with McKinsey and Company lah. I think all these internships, wow, there are a lot of internships in the picture, but I think most importantly it gave me a taste of the industry. And I think one thing to note also is that as we pursue internships, we shouldn't do it just for the sake of doing it. Back then when I did it with quite a good intention on trying to like have a taster of what the industry was like lah. So after all my internships, I realized that myself being a generalist, alongside my learnings from mechanical engineering, not necessarily the hard skills, but learning how to define a problem statement, closing out on the boundary conditions and constraints when you tackle a problem. I think these were all transferable skill sets which I could leverage in entering the product management industry lah. So after graduation, I basically applied to I was offered 3 positions. One is at a pre-seed stage startup where I would essentially be the first employee. The second was another product management role at a unicorn in Singapore, and then lastly DBS, the seed program. So I think back then what I had thought about product management is that you would need the software engineering skills to thrive as a product manager, which in today's context I feel is a misconception. I think software engineering on its own is like a sweetener on your resume. It helps as a product manager, but it's not necessarily the deal breaker if you don't have that skill. So anyway, at DBS I joined the PayLah team, and then I basically was working on features such as there's this thing called like Tabla, which is like this Chinese New Year seasonal game. People get to like Fruit Ninja. Yeah, you just need to gather those coins, and then you can I think exchange it for some rewards lah. So I was just doing the reskin of that game, and then my major achievement there was shipping the PayNow UEN VPA, which allows users on PayLah to pay directly to a merchant using a proxy value. I think that all got me interested in fintech and just working in technology in a big bank. But considering my early beginnings in the startup ecosystem, I wanted to find something that were able to provide me with an accelerated learning environment lah. So I decided to head back into the startup ecosystem, and fortunately I think back then it was right after COVID, and then I think YouTrip was also hiring to build its B2B product, and I was looking to be part of the B2B team, whereby we would be building I wouldn't call it a 0 to 1 product, but maybe 1 to N product, to basically allow corporates to enjoy the same attractive FX rates that we offer for a consumer app lah. And that's what really got me interested in doing product management in YouTrip, and well, the rest is history, I guess. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing with us your journey into product management. Now, Charles, would you like to share with us more about how your day-to-day responsibilities as a PM at YouTrip is like?
Yeah, so essentially I think every day is different as a product manager. I think no 2 days are the same, and I think most product managers out there would say the same. If I were to run through my day, or rather the week, we would have your typical like agile ceremonies. You will have your daily stand-ups, your weekly retrospectives, maybe your weekly cross-functional syncs. But what would take up much of your time would likely be the meetings that you will host with your cross-functional stakeholders to gather requirements, to align the product decisions with them, because sometimes the product decisions that you are making would likely come at a trade-off that you will need to negotiate and sort of get their buy-in on. Then other moments would be having external meetings with some of the company partners that we have, because we could be doing a partnership, a project whereby we would implement something in partnership with them lah. So these are like your typical meetings, but it's not like a fixed schedule on a weekly basis. And then other than that, you would also have meetings that are like with your engineering and design team, whereby you are running through the requirements with them, trying to work together as a team to come up with a meaningful feature set or a meaningful design for our users to use. And then other aspects of the job would also include things like solving complex problems on the fly. I mean, sometimes we have issues on the app that we will need to resolve. Then we will also need to sort of brainstorm for solutions depending on its urgency and priority lah. Yeah.
That's interesting. What would you say are the key challenges and takeaways from your journey so far in PM?
I think I only have 3 years of working experience, so I think as a early career PM, the challenges are pretty much the same as what you would expect in an early career. So for myself, I think the greatest challenge came from managing senior stakeholders and learning how to navigate the wider organization. What I mean by this is, I think every organization is different, right? So as a fresh graduate entering a new organization, it is important for anyone to understand who are the key pillars of support, who are the key decision makers, who is likely to be sort of like your sponsor for the particular feature or project, and to understand who is what is every senior stakeholder's key concerns when it comes to a specific feature set lah. Then based on your understanding of that it will be easier for you to drive alignment, because there are certain features that may be like beneficial for the user but not necessarily beneficial for one of the teams in the organization, right? So how then do you sort of like get their buy-in and let them know that everything is under control is a sort of like a soft skill that one needs to learn as a fresh graduate lah. Then secondly, I think it is also the idea of moving from uncertainty or chaos to certainty, because as a product manager, sometimes you are in charge of features that may or may not have its place in the market or in the organization, and that's why that's your job, right? You have to go out there, validate it, do the user interviews to understand whether this is really a problem that the company can solve and add value to. But in doing so, that also means that there is a risk of you validating the problem statement or the issue at hand and realizing that this is not a worthy investment, right? But you need to accept as a fresh graduate that that is how things are going to be like as a product manager, and you have already done your job of moving something from uncertainty to certainty. And it doesn't mean that just because the feature wasn't shipped is there's nothing to be proud of, right? It's just that you should be proud that you have moved the needle in some sense by helping the senior stakeholders to make a decision in that regard. And then I think lastly, I briefly touched on it earlier, is that for some features, you cannot sort of appease all the stakeholders, both internal and external, your users. So you need to learn as a fresh grad to accept the trade-offs and understand that some solutions are not perfect, and moving forward you just need to sort of offer or propose a mitigating measure if you feel that this solution can be enhanced in a separate release. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing about your journey so far in PM and the key challenges and takeaway. Now, do you have any tips or advice that to give to anyone who is interested in starting out in PM?
Thanks for the question. I think I have probably 3 tips. The first one is I think as a early career product manager, it is unlikely that you would be able to sort of change the roadmap per se or change the world in any organization. So it is important to learn how to navigate the organization, as I've mentioned earlier. And the most important thing is to learn how to build trust with your stakeholders. Sometimes building trust would mean maybe just putting yourself in their shoes to understand how your features would impact their day-to-day work. Sometimes building trust could just mean doing the work to show to your stakeholders that you understand what it means to be in their team, right? And then secondly, I think when managing stakeholders, it is also important to be principled in your dealings. And what I mean by that is that you try not to exhibit any form of bias towards any operational unit. Ultimately, the boon and the bane of product management is you don't have any authority over the other stakeholders. So there's always a term called influence without authority, right? And how you do so while garnering the respect of your stakeholders is to be principled in your dealings lah. So that's the second advice. And then I think lastly, on an individual basis, it would be helpful to constantly be learning about new technologies, such as nowadays you can already build software with AI. So it will be helpful for aspiring PMs to learn about how these technologies will impact your day-to-day work or the product that you are building. And then if you are in any position to sort of shape the roadmap directly or indirectly, I think just having that understanding of the latest technology could probably help you in your career lah.
Thanks for sharing, Charles. Would you like to perhaps elaborate more on how your experience in NOC actually was significant in your like pivot from Mac Eng to product management?
I think, well, firstly, the NUS Overseas College program focused a lot on entrepreneurship, right? So from a curriculum perspective, it broadened my horizons in allowing me to learn more about how businesses are formed from market validation all the way to scaling the business. And then secondly, because you are sort of deployed to an entrepreneurial hotspot in the world, where I went to Beijing, I was quite fortunate to have secured the internship with Xiaomi amongst other choices that were offered lah. So it was actually quite a serendipitous encounter. And through Xiaomi, because part of my role involved working with product managers to understand the unique selling points and translating them into easily digestible, bite-sized informations for our for our go-to market strategy teams, social media marketing teams, to distribute the product ranging from your Xiaomi vacuum cleaners to your flagship phones. I think that gave me an insight into how product managers work, even though it was not necessarily a direct interaction. And then secondly, it was also because throughout my candidature in NUS, as a mechanical engineer, you would need to know the first principles of building a product anyway. You are building it's not a software, but you're building a hardware where you will need to understand the boundary conditions in building a product, managing timelines, projects, trade-offs in building a product or a feature, right, in mechanical terms. So it only seemed like a natural choice to consider product management in the software space, given the parallels between software development and hardware development lah. I think all in all, it was quite a serendipitous encounter, so I would generally attribute it to that particular internship that I had in Beijing, and also the wider, the broader NUS Overseas College curriculum that I had the fortune of experiencing.
Besides your full-time career, I also heard that you're quite involved in volunteering as well. Would you like to share more about your experience, perhaps in SAGE and GoodHub SEA?
Sure. Maybe before I dive into these two organizations that I was part of, I think relevant to the content of this podcast, I wanted to highlight that, through contributing to or building your own initiatives like that, it actually provides you or anyone leading such initiatives with the skill sets that typically would only be available to you at the later stages of your career, even though it is not at scale. But I think these experiences have been helpful for me to empathize with senior stakeholders in my role. Well, specifically for SAGE, so for those who are not familiar with SAGE, SAGE is basically a mentorship platform where we focus on democratizing access to mentorship. So unlike many other non-profit organizations out there where seeking mentorship for mentees can be quite an arduous process, where you will need to upload your resume, submit an essay and all that kind of stuff, SAGE believes that everyone comes into a mentorship relationship with good intention, and back then what we did was to build a full-fledged end-to-end software where users can connect with mentors, and we guarantee a response from the mentor. So that removes the fear of reaching out, the fear of getting ghosted. So I think you mentioned the most memorable experience for SAGE, right? So for SAGE, we organized a sort of like a human library event where we got speakers from data science, cybersecurity, software engineering, and blockchain, all under one roof at Skip. So mentees could just freely roam around the different fireside chats to listen in and learn about what a day in their respective roles would look like. And then for me, the most memorable aspect of this event was one mentee who sort of ran up to me after the event, mentioned that she was so thankful that we organized this event, because ultimately for us, when we built SAGE, the sort of like the vision that we had, right, is that we would be able to sort of help youths to get clarity on navigating their careers. And when she mentioned that she was thankful for the event and she sort of knew what she wanted to do after the event, I think that was quite a meaningful moment for myself lah. And then secondly, I think you mentioned for GoodHub Southeast Asia, right? So for GoodHub Southeast Asia, it is and sort of actually it's a very young and new non-profit initiative that I'm trying to drive. Essentially, what we are trying to do is trying to gather youths and experts in technology all under one roof in one community to build technological solutions for non-profits, or to start their own non-profit initiatives on their own. So in doing so, what we hope to do is sort of like close the digital gap for established non-profits in Southeast Asia. So quite interestingly, I think so one case study that we have from GoodHub Southeast Asia is we had this Vietnamese non-profit. They are focused on first aid education. So in Singapore, typically, first aid education is so like most Singaporeans should know first aid education either through army or them taking their own courses at the community centers. But in rural Vietnam, first aid is not so commonly known. So every time there's an accident or an injury, people rush to help but may not administer the correct form of help, which can actually further exacerbate the injury. So when we first spoke to this non-profit called Survival Skills Vietnam, they mentioned that they wanted SEO assistance because I think in rural Vietnam there were a lot of folklore going around, whereby if you have an open wound, you could potentially use like snake's venom to cure it, which is pure folklore, right? Like nothing scientific. But the non-profit founder wanted us to optimize his SEO so that his page will rank higher, so that whenever there is a need for first aid education, people could simply scan a QR code, get access to his website, and administer the correct form of help needed for that person. So I think these are little moments that I find to be very meaningful in leading GoodHub Southeast Asia, because it makes us or myself feel grateful for what we have here in Singapore, and a lot of these little things are maybe taken for granted as well. So yeah, that's why I am so passionate about GoodHub Southeast Asia. Yeah.
That's nice. Actually, I'm here now in Product Club because I attended one of the SAGE talks.
Oh.
It was a career booster workshop. And after the event, I got to network with this SAGE volunteer, and she shared with me about SAGE. Yeah, and it's nice knowing that like SAGE offers this kind of like mentorship opportunities, but I haven't had time to like apply for the mentorship, because I was wondering like how do you like guarantee a response from like mentors? Because it's like I feel like I'm like sort of burdening them with like my concerns and asking for like advice from them. So like I was wondering if there's any way that I can contribute as a mentee, perhaps.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, so just to clarify, your question is how you can contribute as a mentee?
Yeah, because it feels like a one-sided thing. Like I'm not contributing to the...
Okay. I think there are multiple questions in that question. So I think the first question is how do we ensure a response, right? The second question is there is a sort of power asymmetry between the mentor and mentee, and like how are you contributing to the relationship? So to your first question, basically when we first started SAGE, which is a tech-driven mentorship platform, I'm not sure if you are familiar with this saying within startups, but sometimes you have to do unscalable things to scale. So we have 500 users and about like 100 or 200 mentors. I can't remember the exact stats, but essentially whenever a connection is made, we basically do a sleight of hand. So if after X number of days the mentor hasn't responded, actually the founders ourselves, we will go and inform the mentors to respond. But besides that, we actually also vet our mentors before they onboard. So we have an interview with them to ask them what is their motivation, and we also set the expectations with them that they should respond within 7 days with any mentee outreach lah. And when we say response, we are not asking for like a positive response, like a commitment to the mentorship. You as a mentor can freely say no in your free time, because we understand that mentors are busy people and they may not necessarily have the time to commit to a mentoring relationship. Yeah. Then for the second question, I think we get this question quite a lot. And personally, as I sort of grew older and transitioned into the working world, actually what I learned is by interacting with youths and paying it forward, there's a lot to learn, because you also stand to gain a perspective from the younger generation on what they are expecting in their next role. And as time passes, as one gains seniority, actually it is important to stay grounded with the perspectives offered by the younger generation. And that's actually why many of our mentors, like some of them are like CTO of Microsoft APAC, they also commit to mentoring because they believe that by paying it forward, there's something to learn from the younger generation as well. I mean, take things like social media, right? Some of the older generation, they aren't even on TikTok, but they want to understand why TikTok is so popular. So even in a mentoring relationship like that, they have something to learn about the current trends. Yeah.
I see. That's very nice. Thank you for sharing. Thanks for coming to the end of this episode of Lorong Product. Click here to see more of our previous episodes.